All right, welcome back. We are talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets today. I don't know if you can see all that on the board. It's barely cut off. Been getting some comments, so I'm just going to explain. I got my Columbus Blue Jackets jersey on. Camera's a little zoomed in so you can't see. My buddy at work is a Blue Jackets fan. I figured I'd talk about Columbus because they're an interesting team. I'm from Boston. I'm a Boston guy, so I got the Boston stuff in the background for now. That changes. And I got the Maryland hat on because my buddy's lady fiance, they're getting married soon, so congrats to them, is from Maryland, and that's where we met. So just a little history. I also don't have a Columbus Blue Jackets hat, so didn't really know what else to wear. But that aside, we're talking about Columbus, kind of a deep dive. I'm not going to go through every number on the board. I usually do. It's kind of tedious. We're going to start off with the forward groups. This is from Puckpedia. I liked them slightly better than Daily Faceoff. They were pretty similar. There were a few changes. Big change, I guess, between the two was Jenner and Voronkov. Voronkov on Puckpedia is on the first line. Jenner is on the first line on Daily Faceoff. First line, we got Voronkov, Sean Monahan, Kirill Marchenko. Voronkov, 28. He played 73 games last season, 23 goals, 24 assists, 47 points. Monahan, 54 games played, 19 goals, 38 assists, 57 points. And Kirill Marchenko, 79 games played, 31 goals, 43 assists for 74 points. He came out of his shell, 25 years of age, Monahan being 30. I'll go through some numbers. I'm not going to go through them all. We got Boone Jenner down on that second line, 26 games played, 7 goals, 12 assists for 19 points. Surprisingly effective, considering his past, his history. He's still a very effective forward. Probably a middle six winger at this point, middle six forward. He could play center too. He is 32 though, plays physical, getting a little older, so you have some concern how well he'll age. He only played 26 games last year, has a history with injuries. We'll see. But he fits so well in Columbus. Adam Fantilli being that second line center as it stands, 20 years old. Played all 82 games last year. I think he's the only one on the board that played all 82 games. Yep, only one to play all 82 games. 31 goals, 23 assists for 54 points. Again, he's only 20. I wouldn't be shocked to see him move up to that first line center this season. That's a big conversation note as well for Columbus. He is a restricted free agent. He is eligible for an extension. This is his last year of his contract. I'm sure Fantilli and his agent want him to play out the season, win that number one center job. That's only going to help his pay moving forward. So, I'd be patient with this. Restricted free agent, there's time. Nothing to panic about yet. And he's also playing on a wing with Kent Johnson, 68 games, 24 goals, 33 assists, 57 points. Kent Johnson's only 22. Top six is unique, right? You don't have a lot of really high octane offensive players, but you have a lot of young players. You have a lot of players that are willing to play as a team. You have a mix of physicality. You have Voronkov, Jenner. Those are bigger bodies, right? You have a mix of skill with Fantilli, Marchenko, Kent Johnson, and you got a mix of guys that can play a 200-foot game as well. So there's really nice balance up here. You hope to see some of these younger guys increase their offensive output. You expect a jump from Fantilli. You expect a jump from Voronkov at this point. You expect, hopefully, Kent Johnson to make that jump. Kent Johnson was really good. I don't think the numbers dictated how well he played last year. I thought he was excellent. And Marchenko, if he can stay around a point per game, that's fantastic, right? If he's he's 25. If he just sustains this for the rest of his career, great. He's a top six forward. That's fantastic. That is an asset. Moving down to that third line, you got Chinakhov. Only played the 30 games last year, 7 goals for 15 points. He is 24. He did request a trade. We'll see. He's also a restricted free agent at the end of this season. So there's a lot of questions there. Chinakhov said he would report to camp. He'll play. It is what it is type thing. We'll see how that kind of pans out. I'm not super worried about that. But there is an issue of who would come in to replace that person on the third line. There are prospects and guys in the HL you could call up that could potentially fill that role, right? We'll see what happens. Charlie Coyle, new acquisition, 33 years old. Last year he played 75 games, 17 goals, 18 assists for 35 points. Charlie Coyle, it really depends on the game. Some games he's absolutely incredible. In some games he's an absolute ghost and is just skating around like a lug on the ice. It really depends on the game, on the how his team's playing, what the team needs from him, how much the coach is motivating him, and on his case. So I don't really know what to expect from Charlie Coyle this season. Uh, he last year he pretty much played second line minutes all year between Boston and Columbus, and he only put up 35 points. That's on par with a Marcus Johansson of Minnesota last year. In that 30-point range, playing second line minutes, it's not great. There needs to be more offensive production there. Charlie Coyle, when he plays, can be a 50 to 60 point guy, can be a Selke, get a couple Selke votes. He's not going to be a Selke finalist, but is pretty solid defensively as well. So you need to find a way to motivate Charlie Coyle and get him to play that 200-foot game and play hard every night, every shift. If you can do that, this is going to be a huge asset. If he is just not in the mood to play in Columbus, it's going to be interesting. So Charlie Coyle, I think he'll be fine though. He's a solid third line center, but I am curious to see how he plays in Columbus. It'll be fun to watch. But if you're Columbus, I wouldn't be worried about Charlie Coyle. I think he'll give you more than what you need. Cole Sillinger also playing on that third line at the moment. 66 games played, 11 goals, 22 assists for 33 points. He's also 22 years old. This is a guy that could have a breakout year this year. Who knows? He gets a chance in the top six. He's playing with a little more talent, a little more offensive talent. You could see him really pop off and really solidify a role in that top six. He's got the skill. You want him to put it all together at the NHL level, and he's still young, so there's still plenty of time. Miles Wood on that fourth line. He is 29. I don't know. It looks like it says 39. He's 29. 37 games played last year, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. He's a fourth liner at this point. He's a guy that can play with speed. He's got a pretty nice shot. I'm not going to lie. I've watched a lot of Miles Wood in my life. I really like the guy. I hate playing against him. But he's really found a home as a fourth line grinder type guy with some speed. He can throw hits. That wasn't a part of his game when he came into the NHL in New Jersey, I believe. But he's really added a lot of aspects to his game to sustain a career in the NHL. This guy plays with a lot of energy, plays with a lot of drive. I really like Miles Wood. I'd like to see his offensive production kind of match his on-ice ability, but at the same time, great fourth liner. You can't complain with that. And you got Lundestrom centering that fourth line, 25 years old, also came from Colorado, I believe. 79 games played, 4 goals, 11 assists, 15 points. I've watched Lundestrom a few times. I don't have many takeaways or much analysis on him. I can't really say too much about him. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not going to make stuff up just for it. And you got Olivier. I've seen him on the fourth line. I've seen him on that third line, depending on which lineups I look at. I love Olivier. This is a big physical dude that can drop the gloves, but can also skate, shoot, put the puck in the net, and pass. This is the all-around physical NHL player. He's a power forward. He's 28 years old. Signed a really cheap cap hit. This is like $3.5 or $4 million for a few years. 82 games played last year. All right, so we got 2 guys that played all 82 games last year. 18 goals, 14 assists, 32 points. This guy is fun to watch. You hate playing against him, but when he's on your team, you love him. He's a great guy, great personality. And in depth, you got Aston Reese. He played 79 games last year, 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 points. He's 31, a winger. I forgot how to look up how to say his name, and I forgot the pronunciation. I'm going to say Pitha. It's horribly wrong, and I know that, and I apologize. That's on me. I should have... I forgot to look up the pronunciation. Anyway, he's a winger, 23, played 47 games last year, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. I don't know much about the guy. He's a young winger. That's all I can really tell you. I think I saw him play in 2 games last year. I didn't really have an opinion. I thought there was a shift where he had speed, but I didn't take too many notes. So I can't tell you too much about this dude. But, hey, he could be great. I don't know. Don't come at me because I don't want to give you false information. Then you got Jack Williams. I figured I'd throw him on the board. He's 23 years old. He's a right wing first, but can also play center. Used to play center, transitioned to right wing in the NCAA with Northeastern. Saw shifts both at center and on the wing, depending on where the face-off would be on the ice. With Northeastern last year, Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts, 37 games played, 16-6, 20. I'm talking too fast. 37 games played, 16 goals, 25 assists, 41 points. That was his junior year, so it was year 3 with the NCAA. Signed a contract after the NCAA season was over with Columbus. Just played one game, saw 11 minutes of time on ice. I expect him to, I don't know, maybe be a call-up if there's an injury, or maybe be a surprise guy to make the team right out of training camp. He might be that 13th forward, and he might get mixed in for some playing time. We'll see. I like this kid a lot. I don't think he has top 6 potential at this point, but some of these guys coming out of the NCAA, it's hard to judge. It's like guys coming from the KHL. It's a very different game in college hockey than it is the NHL. So some of these guys that put up about a point per game numbers, which is very good in the NCAA, by the way. Those are pretty solid numbers. Some of these guys absolutely blow up in the NHL, and some of them they never make the NHL. So it'll be curious to see where Jack Williams falls into that. I think he has a lot of NHL skills that can be transferred, or a lot of skills that can be transferred to NHL. So he's a player I'll be keeping an eye on this year. We got Malatesta. I always struggle on the first time to say his name. 22 years of age, left wing first, center as well. 11 games played with CBJ last year. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. He averaged 9 minutes and 40 seconds of time on ice. That's good production for those minutes played. It's very good production. I'm curious to see this guy play more and see what he can bring. They also signed Hudson Fashion, right wing from the Islanders last year, 30 years old, played 43 games last year, 2 assists, 2 goals for 4 points. And they have Brendan Gaunce as well. He's 31, center, left wing, 12 games played last year in Minnesota, 1 assist. I don't know if we'll see Gaunce play this year. I think he's played almost every year in the NHL for several seasons, like 6 or 7. I don't know if that's it. We'll see what Waddell and Dean Evans wants to do with this team and with the depth and the call-ups. I don't know. There's a bunch of other guys I have that have seen playing time, some of them substantial last year. I'll get to that after I talk about the players on the board. Goaltending, he's still got Elvis Merzlikins, 31 years old, 53 games played, 3.18 goals against, an 892 save percentage last year. Merzlikins is a solid goaltender, but you need more from him, and you need more consistent play. You can see he just looks defeated sometimes when he's on the ice. His team can be playing well in front of him, but he just looks absolutely defeated and will let in some soft goals. You need a little more from Merzlikins. But with that being said, you're going to need more from your defense as well, and we'll talk about that. Jet Greaves came in last year, played 11 games, 1.91 goals against, and a 938 save percentage, which is insane. Again, we see this sometimes with rookies. I think we saw this with Swayman. We see this every once in a while. You get a rookie that comes in and is just lights out, and then there becomes a book on the goaltender, and other teams start to figure out the goalie's weak spots and weak points and where to shoot. You see that save percentage and that ability drop, and it depends on how the goaltender adjusts. Jet Greaves is only 24. I'm not worried about it, but that's something to keep an eye on. So you might see, I don't know what you're going to see in net this year. I'd expect Merzlikins to be the starter. I expect Jet Greaves to outplay him. They'll find a 1A, 1B scenario. Other teams will figure out the weaknesses of Jet Greaves. He'll go back to the backup role. That's just my guess. I don't know, though. Anything could happen. Sometimes we see a goaltender come in, get off to a hot start, and never look back and continue to play really well. An example is Jake Ottinger, right? We saw him come in, was lights out. He's been one of the best goaltenders in the league for years now. And their third goaltender is Sawchenko. I played on the Moose Jaw Warriors in NHL 17. Little side note, And Sawchenko was my goaltender, and the dude was lights out. I have a soft spot for Sawchenko. He only played with the San Jose Sharks a few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago. Didn't have great stats, but with Cleveland last year, 27 games played, 3 goals against, 900 save percentage. He's your third goaltender at this point. If there's an injury, he'll probably get up to the NHL, play backup, maybe get into a game or two, depending on the injury. We'll see. Moving on to the defense, you got Zach Werenski, who's 28 years old. Dude was a tank last year. Not only was he offensively fantastic, but defensively, he was pretty solid as well, and you got to give him credit for that. And there's also a reason why he was able to be a little more unleashed offensively last year, even though he's a guy with that skill. 81 games last year, 23 goals from a defenseman is pretty solid. 59 assists for 82 points. So one more point than... Did I write that down? Oh, yeah, all right. My 2s look like 3s. I'm sorry about that. One more point than game played last year, which is impressive. A lot of his unleashed offensive potential is partly due to Dante Fabro. Waiver claim, 27-year-old right shot defenseman. 68 games played last year. 9 goals, 17 assists, 26 points. Dante Fabro fit in so well last season with CBJ. He was defensively responsible, played the defensive defenseman role, and played it well to a point where Werenski could take a few more risks in the O-zone, shoot the puck a little more, drive up into the offensive zone. I'm curious to see how Fabro does this year. We've seen flashes of Fabro being a very, very good defensive defenseman, but it's about the consistency, and we've seen him in elevated roles really lose that consistency. So I'm curious to see how Fabro does this season. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's going to be as good as he was last year, but I think he'll be more than serviceable enough to play a top 4 role at the very least. That being said, you got a guy in Provorov right behind you, 28 years old, just got a nice big extension. 82 games played, 7 goals, 26 assists, 33 points. Provorov has really evolved his game. He plays a much more solid style of defensive hockey than he used to. He came into the league more or less as an offensive defenseman with some defensive capabilities, but it never really seemed to fully click by playing both ends of the ice on any given shift. I don't know if that makes sense. But he's kind of figured out that balance between offense and defense and his role when he's on the ice. And that's important because he's probably going to be playing on a line with Mateychuk, who's 21-year-old offensive defenseman, 45 games played last year, 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points. Mateychuk, I want to see that next step in terms of playing defense. I think there's growth for his defense to improve. I think the offense is there, even though the stats wouldn't tell you that necessarily. He didn't see much time on the power play. It was mostly Zach Werenski. But I think Mateychuk is a solid player overall. I think Columbus fans have a reason to be excited about this guy. He's going to be a solid top 4 defenseman at the very least. But I want to see him continue to improve defensively in addition to maintaining that success offensively. And I think their coach, Dean Evason, is perfect for that. He's a guy that wants his defensemen to activate into the offensive zone when appropriate, but at the same time, he holds his defensemen responsible for playing serviceable defense at the very least. We saw that with Kalen Addison when Dean Evason was in Minnesota. We saw that with Jared Spurgeon even, and Spurgeon's pretty solid defensively. We saw that with Dean Evason. That's kind of his MO. He's a very good defensive coach. So I'm not too worried about that. I think there's a lot to work with here, at least in the top 4. And I think there's a lot of positives. So that's good. The issue starts with line 3. You have Severson, 31 years old, 70 games played last year, 6 goals, 19 assists for 25 points. Analytical darling. I don't really know why. When you watch him play, there are a lot of questions. He's very polarizing. A lot of Columbus fans really like him and think he plays pretty well. And a lot of Columbus fans don't like him or think he's very good. The contract is definitely too high. That was the former GM, Kakalainen. But at the same time, there's positives and negatives with Severson. You want to see him kind of maintain a consistent level of play this year in a third line role. You hope to see that. I don't know. I'm not too high on Severson, but that's my personal opinion. And you got Branson as well on that third pair. 33 years old, 16 games played last year, just 4 assists. Defensive guy, defensive defenseman kind of guy. Can throw the body around if you need to. You know, kind of a physical third pairing defenseman. Decent. Definitely can make some mistakes in his own defensive zone, but for the most part, fairly reliable. I like Branson a lot. They're both kind of polarizing players for me. Nonetheless, there's a lot of offense in this defensive core. There's a lot of offense. There needs to be an improvement on playing defense. I think you're fine with the first line if Fabro maintains the level of success he had last season. Werenski plays like 28 minutes of time on ice, which is absurd. And is solid. Every minute he's on the ice, he looks fantastic. Mateychuk, you want to see some growth. I think you'll see some of that. Provorov, you want to see him being consistent and playing more of a responsible defensive game, and I think he did that last year. You want to see that carry over into this year. Yeah, I don't know. There's guys that can play good defense. There's not guys that can play great defense. At least there are question marks at this time, and that's a big question mark for me. Is how this defense will defend in front of their goaltenders. Keep in mind they have a pretty solid defensive forward group as well, which is also one of Dean Evanson's bright spots. I think I've been calling him Dean Evans. I don't know. It's Dean Evason. I love Dean Evason. I really hope I haven't been saying his name wrong the whole time. You also have Christensen, 25 years old. Every site I see has him playing as at 7th D. 68 games played last year, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. Pretty solid defensive defenseman, 7th guy at this point on the average team. You also have, I had to put my boy Damon Hunt on the board. I love Damon Hunt so much, but Dean Evason doesn't like Damon Hunt. But he's a pretty solid defenseman who can come in and play third pairing minutes and look good. Last year, he had a really down year with Cleveland last year. 48 games played, 2 goals, 12 assists, 14 points. He was a -8. He's usually, I think in Minnesota the year before, he was somewhere around 53 games played, or the Iowa Wild with the AHL affiliate, my apologies. 53 games played. He had something like 32 or something points, and he was a plus player, I think. And the Iowa Wild were bad last year. I like Damon Hunt a lot. I had to throw him on the board. There are other guys that will probably see playing time over him. Again, I got a list. I'll go through it real quick. But Damon Hunt, he's my boy. All right, that's all the players. Other players I don't have on the board that you could probably see ice time from this year, and there's a lot to choose from. Hunter McCowan, he's a 23-year-old center. Looks good. Jordan Dumas, 21-year-old winger, also looks pretty decent. These are both guys I wouldn't be surprised to see call-ups from. I always fumble over this guy's name. Delbel Beluz. He's a 21-year-old centerman. He played 61 games in Columbus last year. Oh, no, in the AHL. My apologies. 27 goals, 26 assists for 53 points. Playing very well as a young centerman in the AHL. Will probably get you some looks. At the same time, his career stats up until last year would indicate like a third-line player at best. So I'm curious to see how those AHL stats translate to NHL play. This could be a guy that shocks everybody, and his success translates into the NHL from the AHL. And it's really like his play style fits the AHL and NHL a lot better than the leagues he's played in the past. And every once in a while we see a guy like this. So he could break into the NHL and find a home in the top 6. He could end up being a bottom 6 forward at his peak. He also could be one of those guys that is a really good AHL player and can never find a footing in the NHL. I'm curious to see how this guy does. Another guy is Keskinen, 21-year-old centerman. Also, wouldn't be surprised if he got a call-up this year. You also go into defense. We got Kuhlman's 22 years old. He's a right defenseman. I think he saw some time played last year. Richard. Again, I should have looked up pronunciations before. 22-year-old right D. Volzil. Pretty sure I know how to say that one. 22-year-old lefty. I think he saw a few games as well last year. I thought he's fine. There's some room for improvement. He's young, but a lot of potential with him. Dyson Mayo is 29 years old. He's the interesting one that played 2 seasons with the Arizona Coyotes, then went to the KHL, and now he's back with Columbus. I'm curious to see if he'll earn a spot on the roster. I don't know where exactly he'll slide in or who they would bump down to the AHL. I'd be surprised if Christensen went down to the AHL. Again, 25 years old. But at the same time, Dyson Mayo is interesting and could prove to be a valuable defensive piece for this team that they might need. They also have Jaros, 29-year-old right defenseman, and Bernie, 29-year-old left defenseman. Bernie played 59 games last year. 1 goal, 22. What are these stats? 1 goal, 22 assists for 23 points, I believe, are his stats. So there is a lot of depth on this team. I'd say aside from the goaltending, Sawchenko maybe can play a backup role if you need him to. I wouldn't be too high on Sawchenko playing. I love him and I want him to succeed and be the best goaltender that ever played, but I don't know how realistic that is. But there's not a whole lot of depth behind him. There's a couple really young goaltenders that played in the Canadian Hockey League within the past year or two. That'll get a chance in Cleveland, so we'll see how they progress. I wouldn't expect to see either of those guys. I think if push came to shove, they would just claim a goaltender off of waivers like a Martin Jones or something like that. Did Martin Jones retire? I don't know. Needs specifically, goaltending. I think there's a need to at least switch it up. Merzlikins can be a serviceable backup if you need him to be, but relying on him to be a starter night in, night out, I don't think is sustainable with Columbus. I think he needs a change of scenery at the very least. I know he's requested trades in the past. It hasn't been all that feasible, so I don't know what the solution is here. Jet Greaves, if he can sustain solid play, I think can be an asset, but at the same time, you're still going to need another goaltender if Merzlikins isn't playing well, and you need Jet Greaves to play his best all season long type thing. So goaltender is a big question with this team. I usually don't like to have goaltenders as that most important factor, but this is one of those cases because I think a lot of the goaltenders you see critiqued are a result of the team and defense playing in front of them. I know it's part of the case here, but I don't think it's the whole story. I think there needs to be a little change up in the goaltending aspect. We'll see. Waddell's history with goaltending can be questionable sometimes. I don't know what to expect from him. I kind of expect him to run it back with the same tandem this year. Maybe I don't know. Maybe pick up like a goaltender off of waivers or something and carry 3 goaltenders for a few days and have that waiver goaltender start a few games, see how he does type thing. I don't know. Waddell's interesting. I think they need to improve the defense of their defensemen. That's my number 2. Goaltending, defensemen, goal hand in hand. This is a team that, were they like 2nd or 3rd in goals scored last year? The offense is there. The stats wouldn't really tell you the offense is there, but you're getting a lot of production from some of these guys on like the 4th line and so on. You're getting some production from your defense as well, which is encouraging, but you need to solidify up the defensive play. I think the forwards do a good job playing defense. I think the defensemen need to also follow suit and do a better job playing defense. There's some bright spots. There's some room for improvement. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid roster so far. I think you should see improvements from some players, especially offensively. I think you should see some improvements from your defensemen defensively as well. And I think they need a top 6 forward. Maybe not this year, but maybe at the trade deadline, maybe this offseason. You got Boone Jenner, who is iffy with his health, 32 years old, still productive. I don't think they should trade him or get rid of him, but I think he'd slot better in as a third line player maybe in the next couple of years, or at least one of those guys that gets hurt. So you don't want to keep losing a top six forward, right? You have Sean Monahan as well, and that's why I have center prospects, because you have some center prospects, but we don't know how they're going to pan out necessarily at the NHL level. You have Sean Monahan. He's 30 years old. He had a good season last year. I don't know how sustainable that is with him moving forward, especially as he ages. We don't know how long his shelf life is. You have Fantilli, that'll be your number one center, but you have Monahan, who's 30. You have Coyle, who's 33. You have Lundestrom, who's 25, but hasn't really shown much to warrant some type of promotion to a third-line center at this point. So you're hoping some of these young centermen can come in and fill those roles. There are going to be injuries that happen with this team. There are going to be openings for and chances for players to get into the lineup and show what they can do. But I still have some questions for the future. 2 right now, goaltending, defensive defensemen. 2 probably starting next summer. Top 6 forward center prospects. They could probably get a top 6 forward this year as well. It wouldn't hurt, especially with Chinakhov wanting out, Boone Jenner with his injuries, Monahan getting up there in age. I think he'll be fine this year. I think he'll be a solid player at the very least. First line, if not second line center, should work just fine for this team. I don't think that's an emergency to worry about Monahan, but it's future thinking, forward thinking. You got to continue planning for your future. I think their bottom 6 is fine. I think you got good prospects. Cap space, you're a little over $15.5 million. There is room to make a big signing if you need to. If you need to trade away some prospects, some pretty valuable prospects and picks for a guy like Mason McTavish, if you find out Monahan is injured and not coming back, you have the cap space to sign a guy like Monahan. To McTavish or whoever and move on. Maybe you want to take a chance and try out Elias Pettersson in Vancouver. If you can assemble a package to acquire him, you have the cap space to do so. You don't have to worry about moving out cap-heavy players because there aren't all that many. A lot of good contracts on this team. Boone Jenner is one of the highest-paid players on this team at $5.5 million. Right? Picks this year, they have their own first round. They don't have a second round. They have their own first round and we're on the third round. They have their own third round pick. They have Colorado's third round pick. They have Toronto's fourth round pick and the Rangers' fourth round pick. They have their own fifth round pick. They have their own sixth round pick and Pittsburgh's sixth round pick. And they have their own seventh round pick. So 1 first round pick, no second round picks, 2 third round picks, 2 fourth round picks, 1 fifth round pick, 2 sixth round picks, 1 seventh round pick. And extension eligible players, Charlie Coyle, unrestricted free agent after this year. Adam Fantilli is a restricted free agent. We just talked about him, due up for an extension. He's going to get paid. Cole Sillinger, RFA after this year. I'm sure his camp wants to see if he'll progress this year and kind of earn a larger paycheck. If not, I'd expect a bridge deal out of Cole Sillinger. Chinakhov, also a restricted free agent. Aston Reese, unrestricted free agent. We'll see with him. Again, should have looked up his pronunciation. Pizza, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm sorry. But he is a restricted free agent. Gabranson is an unrestricted free agent. I don't know. I think we'll see some defensemen called up and see how they are in a third pairing role. That might be a cheaper option than signing Gabranson to an extension. Or they might just keep Gabranson. I like Gabranson, so we'll see. Jet Greaves is a G6 UFA. So I believe that means he needs to play a certain number of games to qualify for a restricted free agency. And Jack Williams, if he pops off this year, he is a restricted free agent. So that is a player you'd look to keep around. That's Columbus. Their shooting percentage was high, but their goals for were high. I'd expect some growth from some players. I'd expect some regression for some players. I think the expectation of this team is to make the playoffs. I don't think it's necessarily to win a round. I think you're hoping for a wild card spot this year, and I think that's doable. It's not going to be the easiest thing. You got to compete with teams like Ottawa and Montreal and the Rangers, um, right, and the Devils potentially. But I think it's definitely doable. I think this should be about a wild card team. I haven't done my full projection standings for this upcoming year, as I do every year, because that's always fun to look at later on. But I think the expectation is to make a wild card spot, or at the very least be like within a point or two of making the wild card spot, and continuing to grow and develop and kind of building towards that future. I think the future is very bright in Columbus. The fans of CBJ have a reason to be excited, and yeah, I'm excited for them. Do I root for Columbus? No. Are they fun to watch? Last year they were, but before that, they're kind of just a middling team. Some games were not fun to watch. Some games were somewhat exciting, but on average, it wasn't the most exciting team. But you're building up. I think this team is getting more exciting. I think there's a bright future. Good things to come. That's Columbus. That's kind of a deep dive into Columbus. If you have questions, I'm always open to doing more research. Or if you want me to just make a video saying this guy's name correctly, I can do that. Because I feel really bad. I should have looked up his name. Kicking myself. But there are guys too that I don't necessarily have a great feel for just yet. Lundestrom being one. If you want me to do a deep dive into a guy like Lundestrom, or whoever, Jack Williams, for example, there's film I can watch and kind of get a better feel for the player and kind of give you an analysis. But that's where we're at. So I appreciate you. Take care, all right?